Hey guys, I'm going to start by talking about what I experienced myself, and then I'm going to talk about how I went about dealing with it, because the aim of this video is hopefully to help people who are suffering from the same thing. And if you're in the middle of a panic attack at the moment, if you want to jump ahead on this video you can, but you might find it useful to hear what I went through first, just so that you can understand that I might understand where you are as well, and it might actually help. So we'll see what happens. So first of all, I have had friends who had panic attacks, but I've never experienced one myself, or anything even similar, any sort of similar episode. I've never had anything like that. I've been very lucky. But I had friends that had been through it, and I never really understood it. And then I had a night a few months ago where I'd been having a pretty busy day and had a few things on my mind, but nothing more than usual. You know, usually I have busy days, and usually I have a fair bit on my mind. So it was all fairly standard, nothing particularly unusual, nothing particularly stressful, more than usual. Everything was pretty normal. And then got home and did my normal stuff, and then about 1 o'clock in the morning went to bed and lay down, and again still everything feeling pretty normal, nothing out of the usual. And then lay down, and then just felt a little bit of congestion in the back of my nose, just became aware of it, and then it started to bother me, and then had this feeling that I couldn't breathe, and really uncomfortable, and really uncomfortable, and went into this huge reaction to it. And it was the start of the panic phase, right? And it started to, I can't breathe, and it sat up, and I can't breathe, and really started to get me, and it spiraled up. And those of you who experienced this will know what I'm talking about. And it's spiraling up, I can't breathe, and it got really strong. And I got up and walked around the house and sat down somewhere else, and then came back in and tried again, and had no idea what was happening, right? No idea at all what was happening, never experienced it before. And it was spiraling, getting worse and worse. Tried to lay down again, couldn't, sat up again, lay down, sat up, and really got stronger and ended up beside myself. Pretty well convinced I was losing my mind, pretty well convinced I couldn't breathe. No idea what was happening, and really lost it. At one stage was actually sort of crying. It was a confused sort of totally losing it, panicking, crying, couldn't deal with it, couldn't breathe. That mixed up feeling of I'm losing my mind and I'll never get it back, and I'm gonna die, I can't breathe, I'm gonna die. And eventually got up and went outside, and by then it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and started walking around and around my block where I live, around and around and just couldn't stop, just kept, and it was a pretty small block, but it just kept walking around, so I kept walking past my house and just could not stop, just felt that this was what I needed to do, round and round the house, you know, round around the block, 3 o'clock, from about 3 o'clock to about 5 o'clock in the morning. And at one stage I went and got on the computer, and I suspected it was a panic attack. Never had one, had friends that had them and had talked about them, but they were different. They had panic in different situations, but suspected that's what it was. So I got on the internet and I searched it, and a couple of the points that I got from the internet that helped at the time were consistently what I was getting from, like, the people, the specialists, the doctors who specialise in it, were all saying, look, a couple of things to keep in mind is, and what was making me feel better is they were saying things like, you'll feel like you're going to die, you feel like you can't breathe, you feel like you're losing your mind. This is one, they said, you'll feel like you're losing your mind and you'll never feel sane again. And that was exactly what I was experiencing. I was totally convinced that I just lost it and I'd never get it back. That was the way I was feeling, like, because I'd never had it happen to me before, that I thought I'd lost my mind, and that was it. I was never going to feel normal again, right? And when I was reading this, it was good because it was saying this is what you're likely to feel, that you're going to die, that you're never going to feel sane again, that you've lost your mind and gone crazy. And then what really helped though, because that made me feel a bit more okay, so this is the symptom. And then what really helped though was that the consistently what all these different doctors said is nobody's ever died of a panic attack. No one's ever even gone unconscious from a panic attack, right? That if people do, there are other problems, maybe they might, but from a panic attack, you won't go unconscious, you won't die, right? And all these things, and that was really good information for my brain, right? Because I was trying to deal with something that I hadn't dealt with before. So then I went out and started walking around the block again because I just had to. It wasn't over, right? I hadn't won yet. So I went out and I was walking around the block again, round and round and round, and thinking about it, right? And then that information I got from the internet helped me a little bit because it helped me realise that, okay, my life's not really in danger here. I still feel like it is, but okay, it's not. And okay, so guys, I'm not quite sure how to explain this. It's going to help you the most, but a couple of things that got through to me was, okay, look, this is in the mind. Now I know it's triggered by a physical thing, right? It's triggered by a physical thing. Now in my case, it was a bit of a blockage in my nasal cavity, right? There was no more than what I've got right now. You know, at this very moment, I happen to have a bit of a blockage in my nasal passage. I hadn't even thought about it till just now, but now I think about it, yeah, I have got that there. But the problem was what had happened was the mind had locked onto it. Now, if we are walking around our garden and we almost step on a poisonous snake and we look down and there's a poisonous snake, our mind goes, holy shit, and you get a big dose of adrenaline, holy shit, and you step back, your body reacts and it steps back, and it's all together, the adrenaline that's surging through your body and what your brain is seeing and recognizing as a poisonous snake, and then you're using your body to step back, and what's happening is your brain and your body are working together on that situation. Your brain's got a fright from seeing the snake and gone, holy fuck, and then it's told your body to step back and your body stepped back, and then you've realised, okay, I'm far enough back away from the snake now, he can't get me. So you've still got the adrenaline, but it's starting to calm down now because you realise you're far enough away it can't bite you, and you're still rushing with adrenaline because like you thought you almost stepped on a poisonous snake, and then slowly you'll come down and the snake will go away and you'll come down and you'll go back to normal again. And the reason that's not a big deal for us is because the brain and the body were together on it. So the body was the thing that produced the adrenaline, triggered by the brain. And then when the brain was content that you were safe again, the body's gone, okay, no problem, and the adrenaline slowly absorbed into your system and you've gone back to normal and everything's fine. So what the brain is experiencing and what the body is experiencing were in line with each other. Now, what's triggering with those panic attacks is they're not in sync. So what actually had happened to me was, and this is what would be happening to you guys too if you're experiencing the same thing, is something has triggered a little dose of adrenaline into the body. Now, in my case, it was that sniffing thing, and then a little bit of shit, I can't breathe, and that's triggered a little bit of adrenaline, right? And then the body's gone, the brain has gone, whoa, I'm experiencing this adrenaline, and I don't know why, and there wasn't a poisonous snake there, right? So the body has locked on to what it thought was the reason. So the body has said, oh, the reason for that adrenaline is you can't breathe. And then what's the result of that? More adrenaline. And so then there's more adrenaline then, and now the brain is focusing on you can't breathe. And then the adrenaline keeps pumping up because that's more and more scary. The further up you go with that, the more scary it becomes, and you end up in this terrible upward spiral of adrenaline and fear and panic, right? And that's where you are. And that's where I was when I was walking around the block. I'm walking around the block with this thing going on, totally convinced that I can't breathe and I'm going to die, right? And totally convinced that that was what was happening. And it was because the brain needs to explain the adrenaline, right? And the adrenaline's surging at this stage, which is why I'm walking around the block. And the brain needs to explain that adrenaline. And in the rest of my life, until now, I'm an old man, and until now, there's always been an explanation for the adrenaline. I've had lots of adrenaline in my life, and my brain has always known why. And this time, the only thing it had to explain it was, you can't breathe. That's your problem. Now, I'm walking around the block for 3 hours or something, right? And then suddenly I think to myself, wait a minute, I've been walking around this block for 3 hours and I'm in pretty good shape. I look like a fat bastard, but I'm actually pretty healthy. And so I wasn't out of breath, right? I was just walking around the block. And so then my brain says, now, and this is where we've got to fight it, guys, is because even though there's these little symptoms in our bodies that I'll get back to in a minute, it's the brain that's causing that upward spiral of panic and stress and adrenaline and shit. It's the brain, it's not the body. So where we've got to take this on is in our brain. Now, I think too much thinking can probably make it more stressful and more difficult. I think we've got to keep the thinking simple, right? We've got to talk to ourselves and keep the thinking simple, because otherwise you end up in an inward fucking too much thinking thing. So I was walking around the block, which was actually helping me. Now, whatever helps you, you know, at the time, if it's a healthy thing, like walking around the block's a healthy thing to do, right? I mean, as I was walking around, I was thinking, well, this is a healthy thing to do. Walking around the block for 3 hours isn't going to damage my health. And then I realised I've been walking around the block for 3 hours and I'm not panting, right? So I can't have a breathing problem. Now, if you haven't had panic attacks, this is going to sound like a strange thing, but if you've had them before, you'll recognise this. The logic, you've got to use logic, and you've got to really use logic to make yourself recognise what's going on. And it was like, wait a minute, I can't have a breathing problem, because if I had a breathing problem, I wouldn't be able to walk around the block like this, would I? And then the next thing I did was, okay, wait a minute. So I was walking round and round, and the next thing I did was I held my breath. So I just stopped breathing. I just stopped breathing in. So I'm walking along and I just stopped breathing in. For 15 seconds or whatever it is. And then I took a breath. And then my brain's having this little realization, well, fucking wait a minute, you know, I don't have a breathing problem. I'm not struggling to breathe. Look, I'm walking around, I'm not short of breath, and then you use your logic again. I'm not getting dizzy. You know, if you really are not getting enough oxygen to your brain, you'll be getting dizzy and you'll be getting other symptoms. Didn't have any of them. Now, I know some people, when they get panic attacks, hyperventilate. That's, again, you're creating your own symptom there. So again, you've got to take control of your breathing with your mind and just slow it right down, and just if you're going to stop breathing, look, for me it worked. I didn't have a problem with hyperventilating, right? So for me it worked. I could just stop breathing for 10-15 seconds and then take a slow breath again. If you're struggling with the hyperventilation thing, maybe that's not a good strategy for you, but you can still use the same logic. Just slow your breathing down and lie there or sit there or whatever you're doing, and just breathe slowly, and then just logically think about it. You're not going unconscious. You're not getting pins and needles at the tips of your fingers and toes. You're not getting the stuff going on that would be if you weren't getting enough oxygen, right? It's not what's happening. So then what I did was, that solved it, because then once my brain recognised that it's bullshit. Now, I eventually put this into a shorthand, right? Because I think we've got to keep the thinking simple. So I put it into a shorthand where I'd just say to myself, bullshit. If I found my brain starting to go, wait a minute, and it still happened, I've got to tell you, for a few weeks afterwards, after this big event, occasionally it happened where I'd sort of think, hang on, am I short of breath? And then I'd just grab hold of it and I'd go, bullshit. Because it's bullshit. So I simplified it in my mind, bullshit. I don't have a breathing problem. And then you know what happened? What happened was, I still had a fair bit of adrenaline going on, because this had been a traumatic event. This is the first one I'd ever had. I'd never had any sort of mental type struggle like this ever in my life. So it was a fairly traumatic event. It had been going on all night. It was terrible. It was terrible. The good news is, guys, it was the worst one. The first one was the worst one, okay? As you'll see. So if you're in the middle of your first one at the moment, don't worry, okay? It gets better. So okay, now my brain has grabbed hold of the fact that I don't have a breathing problem. You know what it did? It still had all this adrenaline, so it moved on to another thing. What it found was that, you know, sometimes if you feel like you're going to burp, you've got a bit of gas or something in your chest and you feel like you're going to burp, and you do a tiny little burp maybe, right? And suddenly I got this feeling in my chest. I can actually recreate it right now just by thinking about it. And I got this little feeling in my chest that I needed to burp, right? And I really started to fixate on it, and then that became the problem. Then I'm fixating on that. That's the problem. I need to burp and I can't. I need to burp and I can't. I need to burp and I can't. And you know what I did? I actually went to a convenience store, 24-hour convenience store, bought bottles of soda water, took it home and was drinking bottles of soda water to use that to make me burp, because I thought that would relieve this tension in my chest, right? And then slowly I realized, well, not slowly, over a period of a couple of hours, I then started to logic it out and realized that that wasn't the problem either. That there's no big problem with you not being able to burp, right? I mean, it's going to sound really irrational to some people, but those of you who experienced this sort of thing before will understand it. So I was totally convinced that was the problem, that there was this problem with me not being able to burp, right? And then I ended up in that thing. So, and then eventually the same thing. What I did was, and it's a mind over matter thing, it's where you've just got to you got to logic it out. So, okay, so then I logicked it out. I thought, look, I feel like that's the problem, okay? I feel like that's the problem, but if that is the problem, then that's not a big deal. You're not going to die from that. It felt like an incredible congestion here where I needed to burp and I couldn't, you know? And that was setting the spiral off again with the adrenaline. And then again, I logicked it out and thought, well, I'll just lie here. And by that stage, I could actually lie down. And I went and lay on the sofa, and I was lying on the sofa, and I just let it calm down, right? And then eventually I got to the point where I just ignore it. And what happens is, and this is what proves it, guys. You guys who have gone through these panic attacks will know that what proves that it's purely mental is that when you think about something else, or when you get distracted by something else, it gets better for a while, doesn't it? And that's what was happening, is that I'd get on the internet, I'd be researching on the internet, and during that period of time I'd be okay, and it would calm down a bit. So eventually I'd get it back down again. And so the reality was, and then eventually what happened is I got under control, guys, and then the reality was that the physical aspect was just a little bit of tension in the chest that was no different than what I'd normally experience. Now, it just happens, doesn't it, that sometimes if we have a busy day or something, we get a little bit of tension in our chest, or we get a little bit of discomfort, some little discomfort that usually you won't notice. But what happens is, if you lock onto it when you're in that thing and get that little bit of adrenaline happening, and off you go. Now, I'm not quite sure where I should go with this next, guys. I did actually go, I struggled with it for a couple of days, and I did actually go get some medication. And I'll just cover this quickly. I got some medication to help me sleep, because I was having trouble sleeping for the next couple of nights, because I'd lie down, and what was happening is I'd lie down and I'd be in fear of it happening again. And you know what happens then? The adrenaline comes up and you get up in that cycle again where you're thinking, it's this, it's this, it's this, it's this. I don't want that to happen now. So I did actually get some medication to help me sleep, and I took it the first 2 nights, and then I didn't want to keep taking it because I didn't want to tell my mind that this problem was that real that it needed medication. Now, if you need medication for this and it'll help, then that's fine. But just for me, I decided that you can't take medication forever anyway, and that the bottom line with these panic attack things is it is psychosomatic. Even though there's a small physical thing that you might be locking onto that actually sets you off on the spiral, it's not really physical. It's up here, right? And the reason that we know that is because we can solve it with just our thinking. It can actually go away for short periods of time when we're distracted by something else. And there is a whole heap of different therapies that involve distracting yourself when you're suffering from this, distract yourself with something, and that proves it's psychosomatic, right? It proves it's all in our mind. So that's where the battle has to take place. And for me, I didn't want to convince my mind that the only way I could deal with it was by taking the medication. So I actually took the tablets for 2 nights, and then I had a month's worth of medication. I had 28 left, and I just kept them. And that was sort of reassuring that if I had a really bad time again that I could take them, but I just didn't want to take them and convince my mind that I needed them, because it gives the whole thing more credibility. And I mean, we know how real it is when we're living through it, but once you recognize that it's not a physical thing, it's a mental thing, then we don't want to give it more credibility than it deserves, you know. And so it took me a couple of days to really get back to feeling normal again, you know, but just using this strategy that, nah, that's bullshit. That if I felt it coming up, and all it really is that, you know, here we are now, you know, it's been a few months since then, and now and again, it's sort of almost once, I'll feel that bit of something and I'll just ignore it. And it just goes away. Just talking to you guys about it now, I can almost feel that tension that I was locking onto. I can almost feel it in there. And then, but now it just doesn't go anywhere now, because I'm not scared of it now. And I think that's the other problem, is that once you've been through that, it's sort of like you're scared of going through it again. And that in itself, if you start, is that it happening again? Right? And is that happening again? And then that can set you off, because then you get the adrenaline, it comes on again, and you lock onto something else, and lock onto something else. I think it's the locking onto it, guys. It's when it starts to come on and you lock onto it. Oh no, it's that thing again. And you lock onto it, you know, it's that thing again. And I think the key is not to lock onto it. Is it anything, hit it on the head, is bullshit. Whenever it starts, now whatever it triggers it for you, you know, whatever it triggers it for you, when it starts, just go, no, fuck that, that's bullshit. Because it is, it's bullshit. It's bullshit, guys. And then since I've got that handle on it, it's never happened again. That was the worst one. After that, occasionally I'd lie down to go to sleep, and it'd sort of start, oh, fuck off, that's bullshit. And the worst I got to after that, once I'd got this in my head, once I'd worked out how to fight it, the worst I had after that was just, I'd lie there sometimes to go to sleep and struggle with it a bit, but you just gotta just lie there and go, no, fuck you, and just lie there. And I think a couple of times I ended up getting up and going back out to the kitchen and getting some water or something to distract me, and went back in, lay down again. But after that, it was just, I didn't even feed it with that. You don't want to feed it, I reckon. You don't want to feed it. So once I realised that, I didn't want to even feed it by getting up again. It was like, no, fuck you. And you lie there and think about something else. And I know at first this seems like it's just too simplistic, guys, but it really, you get to this point, if you just don't feed it, you don't give it any fucking, what do you call it? Give it any credibility. And you just, nah, fuck it. You know, it's bullshit. And now, or after that, I'd lie there at night, and if it did sit for, no, that's not right, it's bullshit, and I'd just think about something else, and it'd just go away. And that's it. It's never going to happen to me again now, because it doesn't get past that initial bit of, you know, talking to you now, I can actually recreate that funny burp thing, that I can feel it. That bit of thing that makes me want to burp. But now what happens is, if I start to feel that, what I do is actually relax, and I don't really need to burp. That's all. It's just a psychosomatic thing, right? But what'll actually happen is, if I relax, is a couple of minutes later I probably will burp, because, you know, you've always got one in you, haven't you? So I'm not sure if this has helped, guys, or if I need to make another one, but hopefully that there's something in what I've said that somebody's gone, right, that's true. Because it's 100% our mind, guys. Whatever it is physically that set you off, you know, whatever that tension was, or whatever that feeling was that you had that set you off, it was mild. And if you were in the middle of 10-pin bowling, or playing with your friends, or playing PSP, or doing whatever else you were doing, when that actually happened, you wouldn't have even noticed it. You know, the only reason that mine got set off, that first one got set off when it did, was because I was lying down in the dark and I noticed it. You know, I'd had a really busy day up till then, had no problems up till then, because whatever that feeling was had been there for hours probably, I don't know, hadn't even noticed it, whatever it was. And all it was probably, oh, who knows, a bit of indigestion, a bit of tension from a big day, who knows. If I just lay down and gone to sleep, whatever it was would have just passed on. But, you know, because I locked onto it, and that's the key. You just can't lock onto it, you can't indulge it, you just can't feed it. Don't feed it. So, anyway, hopefully that helps, guys. If I need to make another one about this, or if it will help to make another one, I will, okay? Because this is very important, I know. More videos coming soon.